Brendan Shanahan, the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs, about to speak now.
Thank you, everybody, for coming down this afternoon. During this difficult season, obviously, I recognize that there were going to be changes. When I was interviewed for this job by Tim Lewicki about a year ago, the one thing I had said to him was, the only real reason to come here and do this is if we are committed to building a team that is capable of winning a Stanley Cup. With that in mind, as the season wore on, we recognized that some difficult decisions were going to have to be made at the conclusion of the season. Yesterday was a hard day, but I felt that it was a day in which we needed to be decisive and take action. Didn't think it was fair for people to wait. So we approached those that we did. We made some changes for the organization that we thought were best going forward as we build this team into the team that we feel this city, the fans, deserve and demand. I'd like to thank Dave Nonis, Peter Horachek, and his coaching staff for everything they have done for us. And at that point, I'd like to take questions.
We'll take, please wait for the microphones. We'll take the first question from Elliot Friedman.
Brendan, when you started to think about this over the year, at what point did you finally sit down and say, we're going to have to make the kind of changes that you made yesterday?
I think it's been an evaluation that has occurred throughout the year, but obviously as we came down to the end of the season, it was something that became clearer and clearer exactly how deep and how far we had to do it. When we hired Mark Hunter, obviously Mark is one of his jobs and job's description that Dave Nonis and I had asked him to do was go out and find us players, but we also wanted him to assess our scouting department, pro and amateur, from top to bottom. So that was something that we had intended on doing all year long.
Pierre?
Brendan, can you describe what you're looking for in terms of the makeup of the next GM of this team and whether Kyle Dubas and Mark Hunter are candidates within that process?
Well, the one thing I don't want to do this early in the process is eliminate anyone from the process. We have time. There are people who are available now. There'll be more people available, obviously, as the summer goes along. We want someone that shares our vision. We need to have a team with greater character. We have to have people that represent this city and represent this team as it deserves. I think that we have an incredibly loyal, resilient fan base. We need to have an incredibly resilient group of players that love to play in Toronto. We need to have an incredibly resilient group of managers from top to bottom that are committed to doing this in Toronto, in spite of any difficulties or perceived difficulties that this is a harder market than other markets. I don't believe that. I think that the rewards are great here and the pressure is great, but I think that there are a lot of individuals that want to take on challenges like that.
Mike?
Brendan, as a former player who's won Stanley Cups, you probably understand better than anybody the commitment it takes on the ice and off the ice to be successful. And I'm wondering if when you look at your leadership group, do you believe those players made the commitment that they needed to make? And if the answer to that question is no, do you expect to change your leadership group before next season?
The obvious answer to that is, as a group, no. They know it, we know it, everyone in here knows it. The job didn't get done. They're professionals. I'm not in here to pile on top of them. It's been a difficult season for them, but they also understand that yesterday was just the beginning, that there will be some changes. We have some good pieces here. This is not a situation where we don't have anything to build from. But they recognize it. They've been around, some of them, and they understand that there are going to be changes made in that regard as well.
Chris?
Brendan, when you change as many scouts as you did yesterday, how does that impact the draft? That's obviously going to be a big one, but even on the pro side going forward, will it be a different kind of approach you take scouting-wise, or?
Not a different approach. Again, like I said, Mark, this was something that Mark was evaluating all season long. People that he valued in his department and people that he thought weren't going to be a part of what he saw as a lean and effective team. So in no way would he have ever diminished our ability or hurt our chances at the draft table. In his words, because this was his decision, it was his responsibility that we gave him. Mark knows scouting, Mark knows talent, and this had to be his team and had to be his group. He would never ever put the Leafs in a position where there was information going out that was going to hurt us, or there was information that we lacked as we approached the draft. He has the people that he trusts, the people that he likes, and we think that it'll be a less crowded room, but a more effective room as we approach the draft.
Gord.
Brendan, with the amount of support staff you have in place, and you talk about people that share your vision, at this point, are you considering being president and general manager, even in the short term, to get to do it the way you want to do it?
Well, I'll pitch in at this point, but I trust. Obviously, I have a day-to-day impact on the decisions of our club. But my interim general managers with Mark and with Kyle, they're going to do a lot of the day-to-day work. We will lean on each other as we search for a new general manager. As far as making myself general manager, that's not my intention.
Brendan, will patience be a mission statement with your young prospects and the Marlies and those guys coming up through the system as you look forward to the next 2-3 years?
You know, it's important. When people ask me about the plan here in Toronto, I've often said, and I've learned over the last several months, the plan is not some unique plan that you won't hear a lot of 29 other teams say that they have to do, which is draft, develop, patience, make good choices. The challenge here in Toronto is not to come up with the plan. The challenge in Toronto is to stick to it. That is the hard part. Our vision is indeed to draft and develop our own players. When a player is ready to come up, he'll come up. If a player needs more time to reach his full potential, we'll leave him down there. I think every decision that we make has to be about, again, like I said, how do we build a winning organization that can sustain itself year after year after year through the draft? So I think that is our vision. When people want to know the day-to-day plan, I'm sorry, it's not in an effort to be elusive or to hide things from people, but when the other 29 teams start out laying out their plan on a day-to-day basis, maybe we'll discuss it as well. But the plan changes. The vision doesn't change. The vision that you have to build a team this way doesn't change. Not for me. But the plan changes day-to-day, week-to-week, because it is a sport and things change. But as far as having the patience to do what's needed to be done, yeah, you have to have a stomach in order to get through it in a place with this much passion. I have that stomach, and I think everybody that is coming here, and I can tell you the board does, we've gotten excellent support from our board that this has to be done the right way, this has to be built the correct way. They understand that there are no shortcuts. Shortcuts have gotten this organization into trouble in the past, and that this has to once and for all be a build that we are committed to and that we don't stray from.
Steve.
Brendan, the person who hired you is leaving, and someone else is going to be in that job that at this point you don't even know who it is. You're looking to hire a general manager who has a staff already in place. Are you not just repeating the mistakes of the past now by going out and bringing in a general manager while maintaining the assistants?
This job won't be for some general managers, but those general managers won't be for us. The one statement I don't really like to say too much is this is how it's always been done. That doesn't really make much sense to me. I believe we are building a very capable and dedicated staff of people. The type of general manager that I want to bring to Toronto is someone that recognizes that and wants to be a part of that team. As far as who replaces Tim Lewicki, like I said, I've gotten extreme support from our board, They understand, they're frustrated that this hasn't happened over the years, and they understand that this has to be done the right way, and sometimes the right way takes a while. So I have the complete faith that our board knows that this has to be done the right way. So I have complete faith that they're going to hire somebody that shares that vision.
Brendan, what's your evaluation of the lineup as you see it right now?
I spoke about it a little bit before. I think we've got some good pieces, but we have some talented parts to this team, but as a group, as a mix, I think that they've shown and they understand and accept that over the last several years, not just this year, for whatever reason, the mix doesn't work. And they understand that for that reason, in spite of the fact that we have talented individuals, if the mix doesn't work, there's going to be changes.
Terry? Oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
You addressed earlier that you don't want to be the general manager. Considering the place of this team right now, which is about as close to rock bottom as this franchise has ever been, why wouldn't you, even for the short time, consider that?
That's not where my goal is today. My goal right now is to focus on finding a general manager. If we're talking in a couple months and I feel differently, I'll let you know. But for now, I can assure you that my goal is to find a very capable general manager. I think that, like I said, this might not be the right fit for certain people, but they might not be the right fit for us. And I think that there'll be no shortage of the right people that want to be a part of this. If we get to a point where we're not finding the right person, then we may have to reassess this. That's why I said the vision doesn't change. Sometimes the plan does change, but I can assure you all right now that that's not my intention, not my hope.
Terry. Brendan, you spoke of the mix of players going forward. Does that include Phil Kessel and Dion Phaneuf, or should it be a focal point of the new general manager to try to move them to kind of reinvent this club on the ice?
After what's happened here over the last several years, I think it has to include everybody. And that's not to say, again, like I said, that's not to say that we don't have talented individuals and that some of them won't be coming back. But they understand, and everybody here understands, and I think the fans understand, and I think the fans demand that this has to change as well. I think sometimes people here try to suggest that the reason why this can't be done is that the fans of Toronto don't have a stomach to endure what truly needs to be done. I don't believe that. I think that they're dying for it to be done. Some people blame you. You can't do it with the press here. I think that's a cop-out as well. I think it is on us to have the determination to stick with the plan and to do this the right way.
Kevin.
Brendan, excuse me. This plan, do you have a time frame for when you think this team will be returning to respectability? And along those lines, how important is this particular draft coming up? And do you see yourself as a cap team the next 2 or 3 years?
Do I see myself as the what?
A salary cap team, like spending to the cap the whole time.
Well, I can't predict where we're going to be with a cap in a few years, but I think, of course, it's an important draft. I think that they're all going to be important. They all are important, and I think that was one of the reasons why we went out and got a guy like Mark Hunter. What was your second question?
How long do you think it will take to get this team on the road back to respectability?
You know, I know that people come up with answers and come up with years, and I sometimes wonder whether they give a number of years just to simply buy themselves some time. I don't know if that's the case, but the truth of the matter is, and the reality and the truest answer I can give you, it takes as long as it takes. And whether people have the patience for that or not, in my opinion, you don't deviate from the vision. And you have to, again, adapt and make changes to the plan as you're going along, because it's a fluid game. There's 29 other smart teams out there trying to beat us and trying to stay ahead of us. But as far as attaching a certain date, in our mind, we would like to see next year just an improvement in the attitude and the way that we play. I think that we understand if we're going to make certain deals, and especially if they reflect the ones we made at the trade deadline, where we were moving good players for future assets, that it takes away from your lineup and can hurt your lineup. I think that people here can understand that. It's a sophisticated hockey market. But I don't think what they can understand is people that go out and give half efforts and that don't appear to enjoy playing here. You have to give the effort and at least show a happiness in being a Toronto Maple Leaf and an enthusiasm. Even if the record is the same record, I think that we just have to be able to play differently and approach this game differently in this city. And I think that's what had most people so upset this year.
Michael.
Brendan, this time a year ago, you were being introduced to a team that just come off a terrible finish, and the year before, obviously, the collapse in Game 7. So do you wish, knowing everything you know now, that you'd started this process sooner, instead of extending Randy and maybe giving that first half of the season to see what you did have? Because a lot of people thought this day was going to come anyway.
Coming in here last year and making the kind of changes that I made yesterday would have been a guess for me. And I know that people are frustrated and they want to fast forward this thing as quickly as possible. There are millions of blueprints in this city, but we can only use mine while I'm here as president. I can't borrow yours or borrow somebody else's. Welcome to take yours. Thank you. But I had to come in here and see some things for myself. I made some changes last year. I tried to support some people to give them an opportunity to succeed. We made a change around the halfway point of the year, and we asked the players to show us what they had, give us some answers. So this, we went out and signed some players that we thought would give us an opportunity to be better. It didn't work out. I think that we got a lot of answers this year, and while you'd like to go back in time and know all these things that you know 1 year later, it simply would have been a guess at that time, and that's not something I would have been willing to do, or just simply take your opinion.
Pierre?
Brendan, it's going to be an interesting offseason for coaches around the league. In terms of the timing of finding your GM, and traditionally we'd want to hire a GM before you hire a coach. But if it happens that there's someone you really want as coach whose timeline seems to be preceding your GM search, is there any chance you would hire a coach before you hired a GM?
In my old job, people used to always give me these hypotheticals. You know, what if this happened and that happened and this happened and that happened? And it never really worked out. Never liked to work in hypotheticals. But the answer is if I feel that the right person is available, and if Mark and Kyle feel that the right person is available and it's a little bit out of order and we get a fantastic coach, I don't think it diminishes a general manager's interest in coming to Toronto if we get a fantastic coach before the general manager. Again, I know it might not be traditionally the way things are always done. I don't think that I'm necessarily somebody, again, that follows this is how it's always been done, so this is how it has to be done. Ideally, we'd love to have a general manager in place that would help us find a coach. If the right person is available at the right time, we'll make that decision.
Steve Weinel.
Brendan, you mentioned right in the back.
Right, sorry.
You mentioned how much the plan can change and is fluid. You've got a 9.5% chance to win the draft lottery on Saturday. If you were to win it and have a potential franchise-changing player, how would that affect your kind of timing on this build, if at all?
It would certainly speed things up.
We'll take two more questions. Elliot?
Brendan, sort of as a follow-up to Pierre's question, would you be averse...
Sorry, I'm still smiling at that last one. Can I smile?
Would you be averse to any kind of structure like Denver, where the coach has a VP title?
Sorry?
Would you be averse to any kind of structure like the Avalanche, where the coach has a VP title and that kind of setup?
I think those are, again, getting into hypotheticals. You're dipping now into territory that I don't want to get into. I think that we will have an open mind starting today going forward. We will have an open mind in order to get the best people here. Anything that I think will help the Maple Leafs win and turn into the franchise that we envision it should be and that it needs to be and that this city deserves, we will do what it takes.
Ken.
Brendan, you talked about how doing it the right way takes some time, and I'm just wondering if, you know, with your new coach and GM, if they will be given that time and that sort of job security to be able to do a proper rebuild, even if the results, you know, might not be there for a year or 2 years.
I can't, again, jump ahead and imagine all the scenarios that could occur 2 or 3 years down the road, but obviously the people we're looking for this summer are people that we want to be a part of this direction and turning it around. We're hoping to find people that are here for a long time, share this vision. And so long as we are constantly moving forward with that, and again, I understand, and we all understand that sometimes these things do take time, but so long as we are still of the shared vision and marching forward, and then I think that that's our hope.
We'll take really 2 final questions. Rob and then John.
Hey, Brendan, a couple times today you've alluded to the issue of character in the room. How big of a deal was that for you, especially with what you saw over the last 3 months of the season?
Well, I would never attribute any of the places I've been or great teams that I've seen character attributed to one single person. It has to come from a group. So this isn't to single any one guy out or pick on anybody. It's not good enough. They understand that. And I haven't been satisfied with it. They would all have to look in the mirror and probably agree that as a group it didn't get done. But I do think that when you look at championship teams, it's really about a group effort when it comes to leadership.
Brendan, you're going to have a general manager in place at the draft and for free agency. Will he be there?
That's the hope, but we're not going to be bound by deadlines and things like that. We're looking for the right person, but I would certainly hope, that would be the case, John.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for coming. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.
You've been watching a live news conference with Toronto Maple Leaf President Brendan Shanahan on the state of the organization now that the regular season is done and they have missed the playoffs again for the 9th time in 10 years. But looking for significant change this time around, perhaps more significant than we've seen in a generation or longer from this hockey team that has not won a Stanley Cup since 1967. Well documented, a lot of futility, perhaps more this year than they have seen, as said, in a long time. Rod Smith back with Jeff O'Neill and Darren Dreger. I am gathering that neither of you are all that stunned by what Shanahan had to say. Your impressions, though, in the wake of the firing of his general manager, Dave Nonis, and also the coach, Peter Horachek, yesterday.
Well, evidently, Brendan Shanahan is leaning heavily on the fan card. That was the trump card that he used in addressing the media and the fans, saying that, the fans have to understand and appreciate that there is a plan and there is a long-term vision and things have to be done the right way. And he believes that the fan base of the Toronto Maple Leafs does embrace all of that. But he says what the fans don't understand is the people who give half efforts. And earlier in his media conference, he talked about the need to have a team of greater character. The message that's delivered to me in hearing all of that is that Phil Kessel is gone, Dion Phaneuf is gone, and the bloodletting of the roster will continue without question in the offseason. Otherwise, you don't lay that at the feet of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
He also did mention, Dregs, that resiliency and loyalty, and that's what the Toronto Maple Leaf fans are, and he doesn't think it's too much to ask for the players to show that to the fans when they're going on the ice. Instead of getting down 1-0 in the first 10 minutes and you mail it in and the game's over. Resilient players, loyal players to give back to the fans who are that, that's what has to happen going forward.
He was asked about why he waited a year when it seemed obvious to everyone that they weren't going to win with this core, but he did emphasize that fact that he did want to sit back. He largely did too. We didn't hear from him an awful lot over this past year, that he wanted to see for himself how dysfunctional this organization is.
Yeah, and what he did mention was going forward, patience, and you have to stick with the plan. When I knew the Toronto Maple Leafs were going to go through a rebuild, I had to phone someone that knew what a rebuild was, and that's Michael Futa in Los Angeles, and he said one thing: you have to stick to a plan, know what kind of players you want to bring into the situation, and do not deviate from that, because that's your only thing. There's going to be white noise, there's going to be media, there's going to be us talking about it. You just stick to your plan, and look what the LA Kings got. They got 2 Stanley Cup championships. So I found that interesting, because the same people in hockey who are smart are saying the same things.
The most important piece of this organization moving forward and everything that they're going to have to do in the years ahead, particularly in the next 2, Mark Hunter. And Brendan Shanahan kept going back to him and how key he is in this process. The Toronto Maple Leafs of the next 2 drafts have 18 draft picks and counting. So the players that we've continued to speculate on that'll get moved out, well, they're going to generate more draft picks and young players that they can feed into this roster. And as Shanahan kind of joked about, look, if the Toronto Maple Leafs on the weekend win the lottery and they draft Connor McDavid, well, that certainly speeds things up. But you can't plan on that. What you have to count on is the work of Mark Hunter.
And he also said things change in the National Hockey League. The landscape is always moving. You might be going through a rebuild, And Ryan Getzlaf or somebody might say, I want to get traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And guess what? If you get McDavid and then Getzlaf wants to come to Toronto, it always changes. You never know. But that goes to what he said. Stick to the plan. Get players in here that think about the game the same way. They fight for every inch of ice. They're competitors, not just throwing their sticks out there and seeing what happens. It's all about an idea of the player and their character coming into this city.
And not just players thinking the same way. You almost get the feeling that the next general manager of this team, not that they're going to do things by committee, but someone who is obviously going to be in sync with Brendan Shanahan and with Mark Hunter as well. Any ideas? And do you think they kind of go off the board for this instead of a conventional GM?
I do. I think they go off the board a little bit. No different than the hiring of Kyle Dubas. Brendan Shanahan did not know Kyle Dubas before hiring him as an assistant general manager. For me, the top two names on this graphic, Sean Burke and Mike Futa, are representative of the outside-the-box new age type of thinking that I believe that this group is looking for. Shanahan said this job won't be for some general managers. And for me, maybe that's a conventional, experienced, cup-winning general manager like Ray Shero, formerly of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Not saying that Ray Shero isn't on the list of the Maple Leafs or that he wouldn't be interested, but the position of general manager in Toronto is somewhat marginalized because you know that Shanahan is there overseeing hockey operations, and you know that there's going to be considerable daily input from Kyle Dubas, Mark Hunter, and perhaps others.
Just get them both. Sean Burke said assistant to the GM.
Well, money's not a problem.
No, exactly. So just get them both, have a great hockey team, and they'll get the best players, cultivate them, and sooner or later down the line, we'll have a great hockey team.
Well, once again, conventional practices, you hire the GM before you hire the coach.
Who cares?
No, I'm just going to say
get good people in there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be by order.
He didn't rule out that possibility that it was a coach available. The only thing I ask about a coach, I mean, one of the hot rumored names a while ago, as this was all playing out, was Mike Babcock, who may not be back with Detroit. But does any veteran coach that we see in the league, would anyone come in, regardless of money, and have to have the patience, or have the patience with a rebuild? This could take 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Well, Brian Burke, one of his famous comments is, if you can ever win with the Toronto Maple Leafs, they name high schools and streets after you. So people in hockey, they have egos. Would a guy like Mike Babcock say, I can turn it around in Toronto? He would certainly be interested in doing that. And who doesn't like making a lot of money? I mean, they can throw money at him. He's one of the best coaches in the world, and he would want to help turn it around. Everyone always thinks that they can turn it around. And just like Brendan Shanahan mentioned, they come up with this plan, this idea, but what they do is they panic under pressure and they deviate away from the plan, and that's not sticking to it, and that's what hasn't worked for years for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I don't see Mike Babcock as a fit in Toronto because I don't believe that he wants that project unless Connor McDavid is part of that project. Money isn't going to matter. You know, he's going to get his money either by staying in Detroit or going to another organization like Toronto or Buffalo or Philadelphia. So you look at this list, Todd McClellan again, an experienced coach that will be highly sought after if he's cut loose by the San Jose Sharks. If Babcock stays, Jeff Blashill is a young, up-and-coming coach that I think Toronto and other teams will have considerable interest in, but there's a lot of work to be done before they hire that guy.
It's very simple. Compile your list, start at the top. If it doesn't work out, you just keep chipping away and going down the line.
Well, the bottom line for this organization, that we mentioned 1967 also, since the salary cap came in 2005, this team has made the Stanley Cup playoffs the fewest times of any team in the NHL, just the once when they lost in the first round to the Boston Bruins. Brendan Shanahan with a year on the job and realizing after that 1 year, realizing before then, I'm sure, that significant changes have to be made, and for the long term as well. So the firings yesterday of the coach and general manager, and laying out his plans again for the future. Thanks, guys. We'll have much more coming up on the Leafs situation in SportsCenter. Join us at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific.